Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to our session today. Hope your week has been a good one. I was just telling Paula a little bit ago that this is a spectacular day in Iowa, spring weather-wise. So welcome back. Uh, on Tuesday, just real quickly, we kind of highlighted logging in and logging out of control, reviewed the home screen, spent a little bit more time on the process of searching and finding things in control, reviewed 3 or 4 of the user options that can be oriented towards your preferences, and then finished up the day talking about the activity manager and how it can be used. Today we're going to change the focus a little bit, and we're going to actually do some real things in control, adding new customers and contacts for those customers. Talk about the concepts of creating estimates and converting them to orders. Spend a fair amount of time talking about statuses and stations. The two go hand in hand. Statuses apply both to estimates with their set of statuses and stations, and then similarly, orders have their set of statuses and a different set of stations. So that's a very important concept to understand. Touch briefly on processing payments, and then quick products, and then we'll wrap up with sufficient time to talk about different print options, both for estimates and orders, and then just general reports. So I'm going to change my view on what I'm looking at here. So just bear with me if you would, please. So you can see, everybody should be seeing control. Paula, is that correct? Is that what you're seeing?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So let's crank up. I'm going to periodically pause at the different intervals, make sure that we have ample time for questions. So, and I can see the questions if you type them in. Paula will be able to see them as well. I'll make sure that we pause at different times. So let's start off by talking about adding new companies and contacts within companies. So to do that, I'm going to go up to the taskbar in this area here, and specifically, I'm going to focus on new. So if I want to add a new company, I would just choose company. If I want to add a new order, a new estimate, and so on. So let's start with a new order, or a new company, I'm sorry. And what I'm going to do is comment on some of the more important fields. Now, throughout control, in various places, you will see fields like this one that are highlighted in yellow, and those are required fields. In other words, you cannot save what it is that you may be working on if there is a required field that has not been populated. So obviously, enter the company name. After you've typed it in, you might want to choose the check name button over here to the right where I'm circling the mouse. That will do nothing more than verify that that company doesn't already exist. So it's not critical that you do that, but sometimes it's a good idea. Now, just commenting on some of these check marks here that you see, the active, the prospect, the client, the vendor, etc. The ones that are the most important that I'm going to comment on are the active and prospect. Then I'll just allude real quickly to vendor. When you enter a company into the database for the first time, they're going to be considered to be a prospect. What that means is that they don't have orders associated with them. Once an order is created and saved, then that customer is going to become a client. Okay. And you will probably see then that the check mark will be on both of them. The active, over time, they're going to be customers that you're going to work with, that they're going to disappear. They may go out of business. They may take their business elsewhere, a whole variety of reasons. You don't want to physically delete those customers, but rather just simply make them inactive. That preserves any order history. It preserves any estimate history that's there. But yet, when it comes time to choose a company for a new project, you're not going to see those inactive customers, getting in the way and having more clutter to overlook. So if you got a customer that goes out of business or you're going to cease doing business with them, I strongly suggest that you edit the customer at that time, take the active button off, and then when you save it, that customer, it goes into the inactive bucket, so to speak. I want to comment now on these three. Vendor. Let me just quickly comment on vendor. Vendor is more in the context of you buying materials or supplies from a particular company, and by definition, they would be a vendor. Now, a company like that can also be a customer of yours where they purchase from you. So it's not inconceivable that you could have a company that you're putting into the database that would be both a vendor and a customer. Okay, I've not personally seen that too much, but it certainly is feasible. Now, looking over on the right-hand side of the screen, there are three things that I want to talk about. One is the pricing level, one is promotion, and the third is pricing plans. I'm not going to go into any detail on these, but just to make sure that you're aware of what they are. Think of how Control does its pricing. Think of it as producing pricing that is 100% of normal or standard. So standard, by definition, means that it's 100% pricing. In other words, not any deviation up or down. A pricing level, however, can be a percentage above normal or above standard. It can be a percentage below that. So if you got someone that you really like and you're going to charge a premium, maybe it's a customer that you have some extra value-added service that warrants a premium from your perspective. I use that concept when I had outside salespeople that I paid a commission to. So because of the personal attention that their clients were getting and the importance of me paying a premium, I charged a premium, just maybe 5 or 10%. 15% below, anything below, might be somebody that is doing wholesale work, where they're purchasing from you, and then they're going to turn around and resell it. So that's the concept behind the different pricing levels. And you can obviously add new ones. Promotion, on the other hand, is you can do a dollar value discount. You can do a 10% that's for a specific campaign, marketing campaign, or you can use it as a means of producing an ongoing discount, having it available. Typically, promotions are intended as a marketing tool, so that you may have a campaign that's going to run for the month of June. And when you set up that promotion, it would have a start date of June 1st, perhaps, and an end date of June 30th. What that means is that before June 1st and after July 1st, that promotion would not be usable for orders and estimates. Others tend to make them timeless and therefore allow that discount or that promotion to be used on a continuing basis. Now, the percentage ones apply to every line item in the order, okay, or estimate. The dollar value ones, on the other hand, is a fixed dollar for the entire order or the entire number of line items. So one is a fixed dollar value that appears as a line item in the estimate or order, whereas the others that are percentage based increase or decrease the entire number line item, every line item. I didn't make that comment on the pricing level, but it's the same comment that the pricing level applies to every line item in that particular order. Now that kind of leads then to a introduction of what's called a pricing plan. Pricing plan is a little bit more complex, and it may not be something that you want to embark on immediately, but think of certain customers that have certain pricing needs that don't necessarily need to cross into all of the different products that they purchase from you. The pricing plan concept allows you to define a pricing plan like one of these that are here and associate that plan with a specific customer or set of customers and with a specific product or set of products. So what that does then is at the intersection of that customer and a particular use of a particular product, that product is going to work differently than it would ordinarily. So that's a brief introduction to those two. The pricing plan, it's a little bit more complex. Easy is easy to set up, but the actual mechanism to do the different pricing becomes a little bit more involved. I see, I'm going to stop here. We've got a couple of questions. The first one is from James. When you're using the check name search function, is it case sensitive? James, I don't think so. I think it's just checking the text. I don't think that it looks at the case at all. Second question is from Jenny. Does the pricing level apply to that customer until it's changed? What about the line items, etc.? Well, I think I've answered that it applies to all line items. Now you can, when you set up a customer like you have here, you can set the pricing level, and that becomes associated with that customer. So conceivably, every time you do a quote or do an estimate or do an order and that customer is involved, that pricing level is going to show up. Now, when you get into actually creating a specific order or estimate for that customer, the pricing level will be assumed that it will be active. But at the order level or estimate level, you can remove that pricing level association for that one instance only. So it becomes a default for the customer, but that can be altered on a case-by-case basis during the creation of the estimate or of the order. Does that answer your question, Jenny? So, okay, perfect. So let me move on here. Down in the company tab, I'm going to just comment on some of the more important items here. A company that you would put up here at the top can be a what I refer to as a standalone customer, or they can be considered as a subsidiary of another company. Okay, think of the subsidiary as being the parent company or the holding company, using the different terminology, and then you may have other locations that are still part of that parent company, but you want to have a customer record for them. And there are a few reports that that kind of show you things at the either at the individual company level or at the subsidiary level. Coming on down the line, the department location, I rarely see that used. The web address is just FYI if you want to use it. Now, every time you create a customer, it's going to assume the primary salesperson is the default that is set. Now, that default salesperson can be changed, or you can, when you're creating this customer, you can choose who the primary salesperson may be, and you change the default, I think, in the user option section. So everybody will be associated with a primary salesperson, and then all subsequent orders or estimates are going to assume that is the primary salesperson. Industry, origin, and region. The two of these that are the most important are the top two, industry and origin. They're not mandatory. I strongly encourage you to capture that information, what industry they're associated with. There's a lengthy list of already defined industries. I would suggest strongly that you take advantage of that. Now, the answer or the question is why? It's for marketing purposes. We had a particular calendar that we used where we would do marketing initiatives for certain industries throughout the course of the year. And the capturing that industry information facilitates being able to do focused industry initiatives during the course of the year. Now, origin, you'll see in a little bit this morning, there's two flavors of origin. This one, think of it as, how did this customer to you this first time? Did they come as a result of a cold call, a direct email, Google, internet, etc.? Okay, so this is, how did they come the first time? The other type of origin is captured at the order or the estimate level. And it says, how did they come to you for this particular order or this particular estimate? The choices may be similar or the same, but they're from a different perspective. Now, why capture origin? The answer is marketing purposes as well. It's not, I don't think it's is commonly used as the industry focus, but it can very definitely help you determine, where are your customers coming from? Are they coming because of direct mail? Are they coming because of internet inquiries, etc.? So it helps you know more about your business. Region, there's nothing that's been predefined, so I'm not going to really comment on it. Now, over here in the billing section, billing, shipping, and section, obviously you have to capture the address of a company, the city, the state, the postal zip code, etc., and the phone numbers. You can have, the system will automatically assume that unless you put a deliberate shipping address in, that it's going to be the same as the billing address. So you have to put the billing address information in, and you can alternately add a shipping address, And then if you really want to get creative and get more sophisticated, you can put other combinations of address information in. Coming over to the right, the PO, some customers require the use of POs. So you would put in what their standing PO might be and then say that it's required. This is a critical field right here, the tax class. Throughout the country, there are multiple types of classes. The most obvious ones are statewide sales tax. Many states have county taxes in addition to the state tax. Some locations have a city tax, a county. So that would be 3 levels of taxation. Other areas of the country, Minnesota comes to mind, California comes to mind, where you may have even a 4th or a 5th level of taxing. The tax class concept allows you to tie together those different taxing entities that need to be taken into account for this particular customer. Here in Iowa, where I live, we have a state tax and we have a county tax. We used to have a 1% tax for in addition to the county, but now it has expired. So you can define a tax account for every taxing entity throughout the state, and then use the tax class to pull together the different combinations of those that are relevant. If a customer is tax exempt, you can choose that here and then say that they're exempt. If you do that, I strongly encourage you. Here's where you say that they're exempt or not. If they are exempt, I strongly encourage you to always capture their sales tax exemption ID for purposes if you were to be audited. Down in the notes and flags section, these are optional. The flags, notes, the flags, look over here to the right. If you have someone that you learned the hard way that you don't want to accept checks from them, then you could add that note or in the form of a flag or in the form of a note, and that would pop up when you choose that particular customer. I primarily used it if I, as the owner, made a decision that they were not going to be permitted to have credit, or if they were not going to be, we weren't going to accept checks. Let's go now to contacts. Here's another example of a required field. Every customer has to have at least one contact. That contact, if there's just one, will by definition be considered the primary as well as the billing contact. But if you have a second or a third or a fourth or a 10th different contact within that customer, one must be the primary and one must be the billing. Now that one can be the same person or they can be different people, okay? The primary is used in the context from a marketing perspective, or when you're doing an estimate or doing an order, it will assume that it's the primary contact that's placing the order. The billing contact is the one that you would use if you send statements, or if you're going to email invoices, then they may be the person that would be designated, to receive the billing statements. or invoices. So you're going to see it, perhaps a long list of different contacts. So you put in their first name, their last name. You can optionally put in their position. You can have a different salesperson. It will normally assume that it's the company one, but you could put in a different salesperson for different contacts. Birth date is optional. It's obviously, I strongly encourage you to always capture the email, and that's going to facilitate being able to email estimates and orders to them, and particularly enhance the ability to do that in an automated fashion. More equally important, if you're going to be doing marketing initiatives where you're going to email things from a marketing perspective to customers, the email is crucial. So I really, really encourage you to capture the email in all cases for every contact. The phone number information is going to be assumed to be the same as the company, but it can be different. Same thing is true with the address information down here at the bottom. It's going to assume that it's going to be the default, but it can be changed to be unique for a particular contact. Financial information. Every customer will be assumed that they're going to be on cash basis, meaning that the expectation is that they're probably going to pay a deposit at the time the order is placed, maybe 100%, maybe 50%, and that you're not going to willingly give them charge privileges. Now, there are other pricing or payment plan terms that are defined, and you can create others. Net 15, net 30. What that means is that if it's 15 days after the order was picked up, it's considered to be past due. Net 30 days after the order's been picked up, it's assumed to be past due. You can add others. If this is not important when you're creating a new customer, but the credit balance over the course of time, if a customer overpays or if the customer pays 100% of, and then there was an adjustment that decreased the value of the order, then that excess would become a customer credit. And then subsequently with new orders, if there is a credit balance that shows here, then it would, you could apply that to a new order. So payment terms, I think, as a former owner, are critical. If you have customers that ask you if they can have charge privileges, my strong recommendation and bias is you can say yes, but we require that you complete a credit application form. I would keep that form on file. I would make a judgment call of that I want to give them a credit limit of $500 or $1,000, whatever the case may be. And sometimes you may associate a credit number and then capture the date that credit approval was granted. If you use this concept, then when there's a credit approval report that would show you ones that are expiring or where that goes going past that date. And then my practice was to request that they complete a new form. Now, if you give them credit privileges, $500, what that means is that if they have an order, say that they have an order they placed and they still owed you $250, and then they order a new project that has a value of $300. The system will prompt you to say, hey, they are exceeding their credit limit. So it's the 250 plus the 300 for 550, and the credit limit was 500. So that's what would trigger the prompt to say, hey, they're exceeding the credit limit. Is it okay to proceed? And you can say yes or no. So it's not going to prevent you from going forward with that order, but more it's a prompt to make you acknowledge that they are exceeding the credit limit. And from an owner's perspective, that's a good balance check. It's a good mechanism to say, hey, is this customer doing sufficient business, and are they timely in their payments, and does it warrant considering to change their credit limit value? So I really can't stress the importance enough of using that particular mechanism. Now, I'm kind of finished with this particular section. If there are any other questions, I haven't seen any pop up, but we'll pause for just a second to see if we've got other questions. Then I can take a sip of coffee. Okay, let's close this one down. The next thing that we're going to get into is creating new estimates or new orders. The process is virtually identical to the two of them, between the two. And in fact, if you start as if you're creating an estimate, and if the customer may be standing in front of you or talking to you on the phone, and they change their mind, say, no, let's just go ahead with the project. So you can start as if you're creating an estimate and then change your mind at the end and actually save it as an order. Conversely, you may start down the path assuming that the customer is going to give their okay and they're going to place the order immediately. But then when they get to the crunch time, say, no, we actually, because of the amount that's involved, we actually have to have administrative okay. So you can start as if you're creating an order and then change your mind and actually save it as an estimate. Now, this is the first exposure to where you might want to consider using what are called quick products. This is just a set of products that I think I introduced to you on Tuesday, that gives you a quicker access to being able to start an estimate. So if I were to just click on digital prints, it's going to open up as if I'm starting a new estimate or order. I don't know which at this point, and it's starting up with the pricing form, for that particular product. So it's just a quick way of starting to create an estimate or an order. Probably more frequently, you're going to come up to new and say new estimate or new order. You could come over here on the home screen. If nothing else is open and you're not seeing this, you could choose new estimate here or new order there. The process for completing either of these two is the same, with a couple of exceptions that I will allude to as we go through. So as we're starting, as if we're going to create a new estimate, obviously, who are you going to be doing that estimate for? So you can either begin to type the name. I could put in test, and it's going to choose the first one that has the word test followed by other characters. So the further I type, the more it narrows down the search. Okay? Let me do one different and just talk about walk-in. Okay? Whoops, I got to spell it right. So again, it's going to search and then find. I could, if I started down to create a new estimate or a new order, and the customer was not in the database already, then I could come over here where you see new company, and I could pause and open a new company template, complete the company, save the company, and then it would be populated here that that's the company that I'm using. The description is necessary. It's a required field. And now over here on the left, you're seeing the more common products, okay? If you want to see all of the products, because they all may not be visible here, you could choose, and now you're going to see the other set of products that you could choose from, okay? Go back and hit that again. All right, now, so we're going to do a one or more line items. So as we go through this, you would choose a product. You would complete the pricing form. Let's do a banner, and let's do 3 of them. And they're going to be 4 foot by 8 foot. And they're going to be high resolution, and I want to choose the banner material that I want. And I could, if I want to, put some additional design time, some finishing work in here, and laminate it if I wanted to, and cut. That's not important in what I'm trying to illustrate. So I'm just going to say okay to this. I could now come in and for some silly reason do something that's cut vinyl. So let's do 4 of, and let's do 18 by 24, you know, for some silly real estate signs. And we're going to choose a color, and then we'll choose a, oops, I didn't want to do that. You can choose up to 8 colors. That's what I was trying to do. So you could just keep going down the line and adding. Now the fill piece here, this is just an assumption that the first one is typically in the industry based on 100% of the area. So the 18 by 24 square inch is by size is 3 square feet. So the first color is assumed to be 100% of that. The second color would assume to be 80, 60, 40, and so on down the line. Now, you can certainly change these on a case-by-case basis, okay? So now I'm going to save that. All right. The reason that I did this, notice this says line 1 and it says line 2. A couple of things that you can do. One is you can choose the move up. I got that one highlighted. And if I, for whatever reason, I wanted it to appear first, then I can choose the move up and it will move it up 1 position. Let's leave it the same. Let's say for some reason, I really don't want the customer to see that, but yet it has to be there in order to be properly priced, okay? So now we're talking about this concept called demote. So if I choose the demote, notice now it's line 1 and it's line 1A. Now the importance of that, you will see if you were to print an estimate or if you were to print an order. You can choose at that printing level whether or not you want the customer to see the child line items. If you don't want the customer to see the child line items, the value that they're going to see for this first line, line 1, is going to include the price of any child items that follow. So you could have line 1A, 1B, 1C. You can have 1A, 1A1, et cetera, et cetera. You can have multiple levels deep. So if you're pricing a fairly complex project, the more detail you can incorporate at the line item level to fully define that project, the better off you're going to be. However, that level of detail may be more confusing than helpful in the eyes of the customer. So that's where the advantage of the child concept is, to be able to hide, the different child items. I'm just pausing here for just a second. So let's go back and choose this, and then test. Now, notice that walk-in is a generic customer that's in the database. They do not have any pricing level, and they do not have any promotion associated with them. But at this particular level, I could say I want to charge a premium 10% above the normal. I could also have associated a promotion. You can have one or either of these or both of them. Okay, pay particular attention if you do both to understand how the arithmetic is going to go, because it's going to start with the pricing level, it's going to increase it or decrease it, and then the promotion is going to decrease it even further based on what you may or may not choose. If we go to the totals tab now, you need to, if there's a proof date that needs to be set, you can indicate whether it's required and then what the date is that it would be required, and you can change that date. The due date has to be chosen. So let's say that we would want to do this one tomorrow, and whether or not it's a firm date. This is getting into what we'll talk about later, where the station comes in. The station is, where is this thing going to go in the context of creating this estimate? You can just say that it's in a pending station. I really think that it's going to close next week. I think it's a cold prospect, not likely to happen, or it's a hot item that I really expect is going to happen. So it just gives you, in the case of estimates, it's going to give you the context of how likely this particular estimate that you're generating is going to come in and result in an order. This is the origin, the second origin that I talked about. And it's a referral to a customer, et cetera, okay? Over here is where you would enter the PO if there was one that was to be used. Here's where it's going to show what the tax class is that's being used. If you need to change the tax class on this particular estimate or order, you can do so just simply by clicking in the box and then choosing the other appropriate tax class. Okay, so in this case, out of state is going to eliminate all of the taxes. Now notice that it's red. That's because the normal tax class for this walk-in customer is not an out-of-state customer, okay? So that takes care of this. Now I can save this, but before I save it, I want to go back and talk about something that's very, very powerful for estimates. Notice that I went down to the bottom of the page. Notice at the extreme bottom left, it says variation. You can get the concept of variations, gives you the ability to present choices to a particular customer. They may want you to create an option for a certain combination of products. They may want you to quote the same products with a different combination of materials. It's an on and on and on. So the use of variations can give you a very professional way to present those options to a customer. The feature has to be turned on, and I'll show you how to do that. If you want to create an option based on the same two line items that I have here, I would simply just come over to the bottom right where the mouse is and say clone. Now, notice that it named this new one Variation 1 Cloned. I can change the name of that by highlighting it and then say rename. So this I could change and really get creative and just say that it's Variation 2 and say okay. Now I've got Variation 1, I've got Variation 2. Since I cloned 1 to create 2, then it would imply that I would go up here and maybe I wanted to base this one on a heavy duty banner material. Maybe I wanted it to be for half a dozen of them with that other material. And if that was the only change that I needed to make, now I've done that. Maybe I didn't want that line item at all, so I could take it off. If I really wanted to get sophisticated, I could come in and actually copy. I could copy line items from an existing company or customer estimate or an existing order. So I can really get sophisticated and start copying and including other items into this one of these variations from outside the one that we're currently working with. I could also start from scratch and just say I want to add a variation and just start entering the different pricing templates for that. So I'm going to stop with just the 2. Now I'm going to save this, and here's where I could have okay. I could save this as an estimate. I could have changed my mind and gone straight to an order. So let's leave it as an estimate. Now, if I do a quick preview, and I'm doing this here because I want you to see the what the estimate looks like if there's a variation. Under the options, these are different things that will or won't happen. But the variation is going to appear in the eyes of the customer as a completely unique estimate, which is, I think, the valuable part from a professional appearance standpoint. So here's the estimate, 3, and this is Variation 1. Here's the digital prints. Keep in mind, this is the one that had the child line item, but notice that it's hidden, and notice that the price contains the 2 of them. Okay. Now I can go to the next page, and now I'm looking at Variation 2. This one I changed the quantity, and I changed the material. So now you're seeing that. Okay. So variations is a really, really valuable tool. to, I think, to give a more professional look at giving customers choices. I'm going back to where variations are turned on. Estimate options right here. So where I went to do that is the setup, system setup, and then that opened this. And then I came down here on the column 1 and chose estimate options. And this second item here, if that check mark is not on, then the variations feature is not active in your system. Okay, so now we've saved that estimate. And I'm going to pause here to see if we've got some questions. Doing pretty good. Okay, now the next phase of this would be, let's convert. Someone wants to convert an estimate and make it an order. They've given you the go ahead. This is the one that we just created. Now I can start the conversion process right from Explorer. So if I don't need to make any changes to anything beforehand, I can just highlight it, do a right mouse click, and say that I'm going to convert it to an order. Okay, that's the path I'm going to do. This is just that prompt. Pay attention to these two things here. This, number one, it's wanting you to acknowledge that you do indeed want to convert this estimate to an order. And it's either yes or no. But pay attention to the two items that are checked here. If you don't want anyone to make a change to any of the line items, the quantities, the materials, the price, etc., then you can lock it. And the order then, when it gets converted and saved, those line items will have a lock symbol on them, and you would have to have privileges in order to change that. If that's not important, leave it off. If you want to edit the order before it gets saved, then you would put the check mark on. If you want the order or the estimate to go immediately to an order and get saved without any intervening steps where you're taking action, just leave the check mark off. And that's the choice I'm going to make. So now I'm going to say, yes, I want to convert that order. I don't want it to have anything locked, and I don't want to have it go, to allow me to change things. Now, in the context of variations, if there is a variation involved, it's going to tell you which one do you want to use, either variation 1 or variation 2. Just for grins, I'm going to choose variation 2. Now it's going to make that conversion. And you'll notice up here at the top that it's going to pop up this, ignore this stuff. This is just my system set up to function a little differently. And it's going to ask if I want to post a deposit. Let's go ahead and do that, because now it's 50% of the order. And let's just say that they're standing in front of me and they're going to give me a check. I'm put in the check number and I'm going to record the payment. Okay. So now it is order number 1049. It was immediately saved without any further interruption. Okay. And it's in a work in process status. Now I want to go back for just a second to the estimate Explorer. Notice this estimate that we just converted now shows that it's in a converted state, and it retained the station that I had previously assigned to it. Now this estimate, if I open it, you'll notice that I cannot edit it. It is locked. You cannot make any further changes to this particular estimate. Notice also that the variation 2 is then not in the lower left corner, is now considered the primary variation, and the other one is retained, but it's in a lower level. So if you had 5 variations, the one that's first is considered the primary, and all of these others would be secondary. And once you get one converted, it's going to be the primary, and you cannot make changes to that. So if you needed to continue to use this estimate, then your choice would be to duplicate it, to clone it and save it, and now you can continue to use it. Okay, I kind of went fast on the conversion side. Any questions here?
Paul?
Okay, yeah.
We're in the last few minutes of the webinar.
Mm-hmm. We're going to go kind of fast. Let's talk about statuses. And I'm going to open estimate status, and I'm going to open order status, and then we'll ping pong back and forth. Every estimate that gets created is going to begin its life in a pending status. So the left, we talked about this on Tuesday. The status life cycle of estimates is pending. Hopefully, it will go to a converted status next. You may have to deliberately mark one as lost or deliberately mark one as voided. Lost, by definition, is the customer has advised you that they're not going to proceed with the estimate. Voided is more in the context that you at your business are making the decision that this customer is not going to do anything. So let's say that this estimate right here, the customer said, no, I'm not going to do it. So you can deliberately do a right mouse click and come down and say, mark lost. And are you sure? Yes. And it's going to do the time. Now it's changing at 5:15. This is asking for the reason. Maybe you lost it to a competitor. Now that introduces the station concept for lost. And you may have 3, 4, 5 different ones to choose from. So it went from pending to lost and the reason. Void works the same way. So you can change the status or the station if you've got this one and you've been in communication with the customer and it's changing. You can come down and change just the station, and you can say, hey, they're waiting on artwork before a decision is made. And that could change to a different one at a later time. So estimates have four statuses: pending, hopefully converted, could be lost, could be voided. All of those status levels have a different a set of stations. Orders are very similar in concept, except that the statuses are different and the stations are different. So orders have these 5 possible statuses. Life begins in work in process. When the work is completed and it's ready to deliver or to ship or install, it would be considered built. You have to deliberately change the status when the customer receives the finished goods, either because he's picked it up or you've installed it or you've shipped it. Then you would deliberately change the status to sale. When the payment has been made in full and it's delivered, then it's going to go to closed, and then you may have to step in and void a particular order. Now, all of these statuses have their different set of stations, and the stations are here. So if I want to change the station of stuff that's in WIP, I can come down to change the station. These are the predefined stations, and it gives you a flavor of where it is in the life cycle. Okay, and let's say that this one is it's in finishing. Built probably will have the same set of choices, but they may be different. Change stations, very similar, if not identical, to the WIP. Okay. And sale has its set of statuses or stations. I can come into this one and come in and change the station, and it might have been picked up. It could have been shipped, installed, delivered, or one of these others. Okay. So all of the statuses for orders have 5 of them have their unique set of stations. Think of the stations as a further means of you delineating where this particular item is in the workflow. Okay. Payments, real quickly. Not going to spend much of any time on this. If I like to think of this as the mail comes and you get a boatload of checks. So as you're opening up those checks, you're going to know who the customer is. So you could either just start typing the name of the customer, or you could do a search and find one. Okay, and to say that that's the one. All right, this guy has a whole raft of orders that are that money is due. So if they gave you a check for several of these, then you would just simply come in and choose the items that are being paid, verify the money that's involved, that it's correct, and then choose the method, and then post the payment. If you're paying by credit card, this is because I had multiple orders. If you're paying multiple ones, that's going to happen. You could have just as well just typed in the order number rather than search the company and then see the orders. And if you choose a one that's and they're going to pay by credit card, then you would use the appropriate vendor here. Now, it's important to know that if you're using the ability and control to allow the customer to initiate a payment, that has to be set up in control. And you might need to reach out to your consultant if you don't do that. Otherwise, you're using it implies that you're using a third-party merchant, and it becomes a two-step process to handle credit card payments. One, to actually get the authorization through your merchant terminal, and the second would be to post that transaction in control. If you're using the online, it's a one-step process, and it's going to go out and get the authorization. It's going to bring it back, post it, and the order will be marked as completed. That's a real quick overview of the payment side of things. quick product.
Paul?
I don't want,
Oh,
yeah,
I'm so sorry. We
yeah.
have a question
Okay.
from back on the audit. Jenny wanted to know, can you revert an audit to an estimate after it's been made into an audit?
No, no. You would, if it was an estimate and then became an order and you want to bring it back to an estimate, in essence, if you'd made no changes when the order was saved, then the sequence of events would be to clone the original estimate, and the order is going to tell you which one that was, and just simply clone it, resave it, and go on your way. If you made changes to the order after you converted it, then you would want to clone the order and save it as an estimate. So no, you can't revert immediately back to what it was, but there's a way to handle that from a procedural standpoint, depending on whether or not there had been changes made. I've got
I'm
about
sorry.
two or three.
Jenny has another question. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Jenny has another question. She wants to know,
Sure.
what do the colors mean?
In Explorer?
I just unmuted Jenny. Jenny,
Yeah.
what colors do you mean?
The colors in the Explorer list with your work in progress, your different statuses. You had red, there was blue.
Sale. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Paul,
On
when you were
sale,
searching everything.
On sale, these colors,
Yes.
yeah, think of it in the context of accounts receivables. Okay. If they're current, they're green. If they're becoming more behind, then the color changes. So it's a function of the payment terms, net 15, net 30, and then it's going to look at the date, and it's going to color code these based on the age of the past due invoice.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Makes perfect sense.
Actually, that's a great question. I just never think of to comment, but it's a great question. It's the age of the sale item. Okay.
Okay. Makes sense.
Thank you, Jenny.
Yeah, real quick, I want to do one more thing because it's pretty relevant. And I'm going to do it only through the estimates or orders. I mean, when you're printing something, and the concept is the same if it's an order or an estimate or even a report, okay? You're going to bring up a template. And there are some things that are common from one to the other. Preview, rarely are you ever going to do anything to change that. In some businesses, you can have different printers for different purposes. Normally, you're not going to change that. If you're going to email this order or this estimate, if you had captured the email address, it's going to have been pre-saved, okay? You can add more, change, or whatever. This is where it gets important. If you're going to, well, let me come back to this one. If you're going to email, the subject line, this is the default subject line. If you want to change that, and let's say that I want to add the estimate number or the order number, okay? So I could go out here to the merge fields and come down to order and choose, and choose the order number. Now the subject line is going to say standard invoice followed by the actual order number. Same concept for estimates, okay? So you can do that for email. And if you're going to save something, this is the default is that it's going to save it as a PDF. You can change the other. Here's the file name. This is how it's going to be named when it gets saved. And I've made quite a few changes. I've changed mine so that it says invoice and then the number. Okay. You can use you can put in your own text here in the file name, and you may or may not use the merge fields. The destination path. This is where that estimate or order or report is going to get saved when you save it. This looks different because I'm in a web environment. Okay. Now every estimate templates, order templates, report templates may or may not have their own unique set of options. Pay attention to the options because that influences what does or what does not print for this particular, in this case, invoice. Okay? Then you're down to the rest of the choices. If it's an order, you're probably rarely, if ever, going to change any of this other stuff. Then you can either preview it and see what it looks like, or you could go straight and print it, or you could go straight and email it, or you could go straight and save the PDF or whatever format as you've designated up here in the save detail. So you have 4 choices, and that's true whether it's an estimate, it's true whether it's an order, true whether it's a report. So these different areas are the same. You got the same set. The options are going to be different, but the choices down here at the bottom are going to be the same.
All right, very helpful, Paul. Thank you.
That's
Paul,
the last page.
We appreciate you all staying with us today. Paul and I were talking before the webinar, and Paul was interested to find out how many of you are actually new employees. So if you want to just raise your hand in the little box if you are new employees to your company, it will help him tailor his webinars that he does monthly. The other thing is that Paul also does a SEER skills webinar for people who are live using the system. And if any of you are interested, that is in the 4th week of the month. And if not for you, maybe for some of the other employees at your company. Paul, what are your SEER skills series on the Tuesday and Thursday of the 4th week of the month?
This 2 weeks from now, the Tuesday-Thursday combination. On Tuesday, we're going to focus on the use of purchase orders, making purchase orders, receiving the ordered goods, putting that in the inventory, and then using in an order where you're pulling parts out of inventory. So it's the use of purchase orders and the inventory module to manage your supply of materials. You can use purchase orders without inventory, but it's not going to show you what you have in stock. The addition of inventory, so you're using purchase orders to buy something, put it in the inventory, receive it, and then you're going to do orders and routinely pull stuff out of inventory. Then on Thursday, we're going to talk about the concept of finished goods. You may have situations where a customer, over the course of the year, you want to establish a pricing level for certain things where they purchase maybe 100 of them over the course of the year, and you want to set your pricing based on that quantity. That becomes something that you put into finished goods. You price it using the regular products, you price it, and you put it into finished goods. The invoice for that entry into finished goods is 0, has no impact on the sale. Now, each month, if they pull 25 or so out of inventory, out of finished goods, that's when they get invoiced. So it gets a powerful mechanism to establish a pricing agreement, so to speak, between you and a customer, where they agree that I want to order and take advantage of the pricing for this quantity, and then I'm going to pull that quantity out on a periodic basis. It may be weekly, it may be monthly, it may be quarterly. That's not important. But the concept is that it helps you and the customer know that you're working with an agreed upon or an estimated volume, set the pricing based on that volume, but actually do the invoicing as they're actually requested by the customer. Both of those are more advanced in nature, but they're also very much real world in their value to you in the business. We've already got 25 or 26 people registered for those 2 sessions. So if that's something that you're interested in, or anyone else, just like Paula said, go to that website and register for those 2 sessions. Each Sarah Skills session on the 4th week of each month is different. We try to pick ones that have either been requested or things that we have known from experience are valuable topics to talk about. Thanks again, everybody. I really appreciate your joining us and enduring running over a little bit of time today. Take care.
Thank you, Paul.
Yep. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.